Okay, very good.
It's blue and
Very good.
that's it. Did you arrange for Rabbi Solda to be here?
Yeah, sort of. Rabbi Shapra was the main organizer.
Yes and no. I never, ever. However, after a certain amount of time, I found that I was saying the same thing. I was getting the same things.
I mean, what I have done,
Did you get the URL?
Shabbat Shalom. We'll get started this evening on page 10 with Yedid Nefesh. As we turn to it, I'll extend a preliminary welcome to Dr. Zola and say we're glad to have you in attendance. For me, I was telling folks last week, it's always a treat for me to be able to revisit my school days, dear old Golden Rule days, and hear from professors in a somewhat different context and say, I know this isn't for credit, so it feels different. But if maybe it is for credit and life is the exam. In any case, we get started here on page 10, Yedid Nefesh. Yedid Nefesh av harachaman meshoch abdach eretzonach yarutz abdach kemo ayal yishtachaveh mul hadarach ki yerav lo yedidutach minof etzuf v'choltam Adonai ziv haolam nafshi cholat avatach ana el narefana lach beharot lach noam zivach as hitchazek v'titrapeh v'hayetalach shivchat olam v'tik yehemu rachamecha v'chusna ben ohavach ki ze kama nichsaf lirop tiferet uzach ana eli machmad libi chushana ve'al titalam higalena ufros chaviv alai et sukat shelomach ta'ir eretz mikvodach nagila v'nismecha bach mahir ahuv kiva moed lechol neini ki me'olam yada la 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 yada la 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 yada la 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 yada la 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 yada la 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 yada la 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 yada la 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 yada la 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 yada la 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 yada la 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 yada la 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 yada la 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 yada la 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 yada la 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 yada la 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 la. Page 11. We continue here. Let's read this one responsively. Let us go and sing to Adonai. Let us trumpet praise to our protector. Filled with thanks, let us greet God, raising our voice in song. Come then, let us bow and kneel, let us bend our knees in the presence of Adonai who formed us. If you would only listen today to God's voice and not become hard-hearted like the people at Merivah, like that time at Massah in the desert when your ancestors tried me and tested me, though they had seen what I had wrought. Page 13, Psalm 96. Shiru l'Adonai shir chadash, shiru l'Adonai kol haaretz, shiru l'Adonai baruchu shemo, basru miyom leyom yeshuato, sapru v'goyim kevodo, bechol ha'amim nifleotav, ki gadol Adonai, umahula meod, norahu Al kol Elohim Aidai Ki kol Elohe Ha'amim Elilim V'Adonai Shamayim Asa Hod V'Hadar Lefanav Oz V'Tiferet B'Miktasho Havu L'Adonai Mishpechot Amim Havu L'Adonai Kavod Va'oz Havu L'Adonai Kevod Shemo Zeu Mincha Uva'u Lechatzrotav Aidai Hishtachavu L'Adonai Behadrat Kodesh Chilu Mipanav Kol Haaretz Imru V'Goyim Adonai Malach Avti Kontevel Baal Timot Yadin Amim B'Mesharim Yismechu Hashamayim V'Tagil Haaretz Yiram Hayam Umlo'o Ya'alo Sadai V'chol asher bo Ailai Az yiranenu kol atzei ya'ar Lifnei Adonai Kiva Lishpot ha'aretz Yishpot tevel betzedek Ve'amim be'emunato Ailai Psalm 97, pages 15 and 16. We'll read this one individually, silently. Adonai malach tegel haaretz yismechu iyim rabim. Ohave Adonai sinura, shomer nafshot chasidav miyad reshaim yatzileim, or zaru el atzadik ulishrei lev simcha, simchu tzadikim b'Adonai, v'hodu lezecher kodsho. And this one, let's see, yes. Mizmor shiru l'Adonai, shir chadash, ki niflaot asa, Hoshia lo yemino uzro kosho ailai hodia Adonai Yeshuato leinei hagoyim gila tzidkato zachar chasdo ve'emunato leveit Yisrael ra'u chalafsei aretz et Yeshuat Eloheinu hariu l'Adonai kol haaretz pitchu v'ranenu v'zameru zamru l'Adonai bechinor v'kol zimra b'chatzot rot v'kol shofar hariu lifnei hamelech Adonai yiram hayam u'melo'o tevel v'yoshev Neharot yimcha'u chaf yachad harim yeranenu lifnei Adonai kiva lishpot haaretz yishpot tevel betzedek ve'amim b'meisharim. We'll read the following, Psalm 99, this one individually, but we'll conclude together with Romamu on page 20. Adonai malach yirgazu amim yoshev keruvim tanut haaretz. Romemu Adonai Eloheinu והשתחוו להר קודשו. רוממו אדוני אלוהינו והשתחוו להר קודשו. כי קדוש אדוני אלוהינו רוממו. כי קדוש אדוני אלוהינו רוממו. רוממו אדוני אלוהינו והשתחוו להר קודשו. רוממו אדוני אלוהינו והשתחוו להר קודשו. כי קדוש אדוני אלוהינו. Page 21, Psalm 29. מזמור לדוד, הבו לאדוני בני אלים, הבו לאדוני כבוד ועוז, הבו לאדוני כבוד שמו, השתחוו לאדוני בהדרת קודש. קול אדוני על המים, אל הכבוד הרים, אדוני על מים רבים. קול אדוני בכוח, קול אדוני בהדר, קול אדוני שובר ארזים, וישבר אדוני את ארזי הלבנון. וירקידם כמו עגל לבנון וסריון, כמו בן רעמים. קול אדוני חוצב להבות אש, קול אדוני יכיל מדבר, יכיל אדוני מדבר קדש. קול אדוני חולל איילות, ויחשוף יערות, ובהיכלו כולו אומר כבוד, כולו אומר כבוד. אדוני למבול ישב, וישב אדוני מלך לעולם, אדוני עוז לעמו ייתן, אדוני יברך את עמו בשלום. We continue on page 23 with Lechat Dodi. We'll switch melodies after the fifth stanza, and I will invite everyone to face the entrance at the ninth. The top of the ninth. Lecha dodi likrat kala pene Shabbat nekabela. Lecha dodi likrat kala pene Shabbat nekabela. Shamor vezachor b'dibur echad ishmianu el hamiyuchad Adonai echad u'shemo echad l'shemo tiferet v'lithilah. Lecha dodi likrat kala p'nei Shabbat nekabela. Likrat Shabbat l'chu v'nei lecha ki makor haberacha merosh mikedem nesucha sof maaseh b'machshavat tchila. Lecha dodi likrat kala p'nei Shabbat nekabela. Mikdash melech ir melucha kumitzeim mitoch ha'hafecha rav lach shevet be'emek habacha hu yachamol alai chemla. Lecha dodi likrat kala p'nei Shabbat nekabela. Hitna arim me'afar kumi livshi bigdei tifartecha mi al yad ben yishai beit halachmi korva el nafshi ge'ala. Lecha dodi likrat kala p'nei Shabbat nekabela. Hitoreri, hitoreri, kiva orech, gumi ori, uri, shir daberi, kvod Adonai, alaich nigla. Lecha dodi likrat kala Pnei Shabbat nekabela Lo tevoshi velo tikalmi ma tishtochachi umatemi bach yechesu aniei ami venivneta Iralti la lecha dodi likrat kala Pnei Shabbat nekabela V'hayu limshi shosayich v'rachaku kol mevalayich yasis alayich Elohayich kimsos chatan al kala lecha dodi likrat kala Pnei Shabbat nekabela Yaminu smol tifrotzi ve'et Adonai ta'aritzi al yad ish ben parzi v'nismecha v'nagila lecha dodi likrat kala Pnei Shabbat nekabela Boi v'shalom ateret ba'ala gam b'simcha uvetzala toch emunei am segula Boi chala lecha dodi likrat kala Pnei Shabbat nekabela. We're seated and continue on page 27. We will recite this one in English. Let's see. Matt, would you lead us?
It is good to thank you, Adonai, and sing your name, Most High, to proclaim your love at daybreak, your faithfulness each night.
Finger the lute, pluck the harp, let the sound of the lyre rise up.
You gladden me with your deeds, Adonai. I shall sing of your handiwork.
How wonderful are your works, Adonai, how subtle your designs.
The arrogant do not understand, the fool does not comprehend this. The wicked flourish like grass, and evildoers blossom only to be destroyed forever.
But you, Adonai, are exalted for all time.
Surely your enemies, Adonai, surely your enemies will perish. All who commit evil will be scattered.
As a wild bull raises up its horn, you raised my head high, anointed it with fresh oil.
As my enemies gather against me, my gaze remains steady, for my ears listen and hear.
The righteous flourish like the date palm, thrive like a cedar in Lebanon. Planted in the house of Adonai, they flourish in our God's courtyards.
In old age they remain fruitful, still fresh and bountiful, proclaiming Adonai is upright, my rock in whom there is no flaw.
Page 29, Psalm 93. We will read this one mostly individually. Adonai malach ge'ut lavesh, lavesh Adonai. Mikolot ma'im rabim, adirim mishvrei yam, adir bamarom Adonai, edotecha nemnu me'od, ve'tcha nava kodesh Adonai lorech yamim. Mourner's Kaddish, Kaddish Yatom, is on page 30. Is anyone here reciting Kaddish tonight? Right. We can defer to the end of the service. We will turn now to our Mariv service, which begins on page 39a. Please rise. Baruch hu et Adonai Mevorach. Baruch Adonai Mevorach leolam va'ed. You may be seated. Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu melech haolam asher bidbaro v'ari v'aravim. Umavir yom umevi laila umavdil bein yom uvein laila Adonai tzvaot shemo el chai v'kayam tamid yimloch aleinu leolam va'ed Baruch atah Adonai hama'ariv aravim. Page 40. Ahavat olam bet Yisrael amacha ahavta Torah u'mitzvot chukim u'mishpatim otanu limadata Al kein Adonai Eloheinu b'shochveinu u'b'kumeinu nasiach b'chukecha ונשמח בדברי תורתך ובמצוותיך לעולם ועד כי הם חיינו ואורך ימינו ואורך ימינו ובהם נגע יומם ולילה יומם ולילה ואהבתך תסיר ממנו לעולמים ברוך אתה אדוני Ohev Amo Yisrael. Shema Yisrael, Adonai Eloheinu, Adonai Echad. ואהבת את אדוני אלוהיך בכל לבבך ובכל נפשך ובכל מאודיך והיו הדברים האלה אשר אנוכי מצווך היום על לבביך ושיננתם לבניך ודיברת בם ושבתך בביתך ובלכתך בדרך ובשוכבך ובקומך וקשרתם מאוד על ידיך, והיו לטוטפות בין עיניך, וכתבתם על מזוזות ביתך ובשעריך. Adonai Elohechem Emet. We'll read on page 43 together in English, 43a. This is our enduring affirmation binding on us that Adonai is our God and there is none other, and we, Israel, are God's people. God is our sovereign, redeeming us from earthly rulers, delivering us from the hand of all tyrants, bringing judgment upon our oppressors and just retribution upon all our mortal enemies, performing wonders beyond understanding and marvels beyond all reckoning. God places us among the living, not allowing our steps to falter, and leads us past the false altars of our enemies, exalting us above all those who hate us. Adonai avenged us with miracles before Pharaoh, offered signs and wonders in the land of Egypt. God smote in anger all of Egypt's firstborn, brought Israel from its midst to lasting freedom, and led them through the divided water of the Sea of Reeds. As their pursuers and enemies drowned in the depths, God's children beheld the power of the divine. They praised and acknowledged God's name. ומלכותו ברצון קיבלו עליהם משה ומרים ובני ישראל לחנו שירה בשמחה רבה ואמרו כולם מי כמוך באלים אדוני מי כמוך נדר בקודש נורא תהילות אוסף אלה עלי 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 מלכותך ראו בניך בוקי הים לפני משה זה אלי ענו ואמרו אדוני ימלוך לעולם ועד עלי 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 ונאמר כי פדה אדוני את יעקב וגלו מיד חזק ממנו ברוך אתה אדוני גאל ישראל השכיבנו אדוני אלוהינו לשלום ועמידנו לחיים ושמור צאתנו ובואנו לחיים ולשלום מעתה ועד עולם ופרוס עלינו סוכת שלומך ברוך אתה אדוני הפורס סוכת שלום עלינו ועל כל עמו ישראל ועל ירושלים. Page 46, please rise. ושמרו בני ישראל את השבת לעשות את השבת לדורותם ברית עולם ביני ובין בני ישראל אותי לעולם כי ששת ימים עשה אדוני את השמיים ואת הארץ וביום השביעי שבת וינפש. יתגדל ויתקדש שמי רבה ועלמא דברה קירותי וימליך מלכותי בחיי חון וביומי חון ובחיי לכל בית ישראל בעגלה ובזמן קריב ואמרו אמן. יהי שמי רבה מברך לעלם לעלמי עלמיה יתברך וישתבח ויתפאר ויתרומם ויתנשא ויתהדר ויתעלה ויתהלל שמי תקודשה בריחו לעילה מן כל ברכתה ושירתה תושבחתה ונחמתה דמירן בעלמה ואמרו amen. Silent Amidah begins on page 47. We will rise on page 53 for the symbolic recapitulation of the Amidah, page 53. Vayechulu hashamayim v'haaretz v'chol tzevam vaychal Elohim bayom hashevi'i melachto asher asa vayishpot bayom hashevi'i mikol melachto asher asa vayvarech Elohim et yom hashvi'i vaykadesh oto ki hivo shava mikol melachto asher bara Elohim la'asot. Baruch ata Adonai Eloheinu v'Elohei Avotenu Elohei Abraham Elohei Yitzchak v'Elohei Yaakov Elohei Sarah Elohei Rivka Elohei Rachel v'Elohei Leah Ha'el Hagadol Hagibor v'Hanora El Elyon Konei Shamayim v'Aretz Magen Avot Bidvaro Mechaye Metim B'Mamaro Ha'el HaKadosh En Kamohu Hameniach Le'amo B'Yom Shabbat Kodsho Kivam Ratza Le'aniach Lahem Kivam Ratza Le'aniach Lahem Lefanav Na'avod B'yira V'Fachad V'nodeh Lishmo B'chol Yom Tamid Me'on HaBerachot El HaHodaot Adon HaShalom Mekadesh HaShabbat U'marech Shevi'im U'meniach Hikdusha Lamedu Shnei Oneg Zecher Lema'aseh V'Reishit Eloheinu v'Elohei Avotenu Ritzevinu Chateinu Kadeshenu b'mitzvotecha v'tein chelkeinu b'toratecha Sabeinu mituvecha v'samchenu b'shuatecha v'ta'er libeinu le'avdecha be'emet v'hanchileinu Adonai Eloheinu Be'ahava u'bratzon Shabbat Kodshecha Ve'yanuchu v'Yisrael Mekadeshei Shemecha Baruch Ata Adonai Mekadesh HaShabbat Yitgadal v'yikdash meraba ve'alamad yivrak kirutei ve'amlich malchutei b'chayei chonu v'yamei chai rechol beit Yisrael ba'agala u'vizman karivim ru amen Yehei shemei rabba mevarach la'alam al'alamei alamaya yitbarach v'yishtabach v'yitpa'ar v'yitroma v'yitnasei v'yithadar v'yit'aleh v'yithalal shmei d'kudesha b'richu le'ela min kol bechata v'shirata tush bechata v'nechamata da'amiran ba'alama v'imru amen Titkabal Tzorhan Varon L'chol Yisrael Kodama V'honda V'Shmaya V'imru Amen Yehei Shalom Araba Min Shmaya V'chayim Aleinu Ve'al Kol Yisrael V'imru Amen Osei Shalom B'imromav Hu Ya'asei Shalom Aleinu Ve'al Kol Yisrael V'imru Amen Sabri? Baruch Ata Adonai Eloheinu Melech HaOlam Borei Pri HaGafen Baruch Ata Adonai Eloheinu Melech HaOlam Asher Kideshanu B'mitzvotav V'ratzavanu V'Shabbat Kodsho Be'ahava Uvratzon Inchilanu Zikaron Lema'asei V'Reishit Ki hu Yom Techila L'Mikra'ei Kodesh Zecher L'Tziad Mitzrayim Ki banu B'charta Ve'otanu Kidashta Mikol Ha'amim Ve'Shabbat Kodshecha Ve'ava Uvratzon Inchaltanu Baruch Ata Adonai Mekadesh HaShabbat. I'm going to have to get you guys to follow me around with the harmonies because it makes me sound a lot better. We turn to page 56 and remain standing for Aleinu. Aleinu l'shabech la'adon ha'kol, la'tet gedulat liotzer bereishit, shelo asanu kegoyei ha'aratzot, velo samanu k'mishpachot ha'adama, shelo sam chelkenu kahem, v'gor aleinu kechol hamonam, va'anachnu korim, u'mitzachalim u'monim, Lifnei melech, malchei hamelachim, hakadosh baruch hu. Sheinu de shemayim v'yosef. Al ken mikaveh lechem. Ka'katuv b'toratech Adonai yimloch le'olam va'ed v'ne'emar v'haya Adonai l'melech al kol ha'aretz bayom hahu yihyeh Adonai echad u'shemo echad, u'shemo echad. We turn now to Kaddish Yatom on page 58. As we do, we'll note tonight, tomorrow, the 13th of Tishrei, we're observing in our congregation the Yortzites of Anna Zenoff Lieb and Nellie Schnur. In addition, over the remainder of the week, we'll be observing the Yortzites of Jack Kapikoff, Aggie Ida Mizell, Maurice Lazarus, Jean and Trotter Myers, Rose Belinky, Howard Katz, Fanny Oberman, Isidore Cohen, Louis Lander, Joseph Apatov, and Fred Zorndorf. We also think at this time of those we've lost in our congregation in the last 11 months, among them Salma Kuhn, Lori Gupp, Ben Koff, Matt Yosefat, Peter Gabor, Sandy Richards, Kay Gaines, Irv Zipperstein, Elaine Nevins, Joan Dane, Eileen Chodesh, June Howard, Gerald Sapadin, Pam Simowitz-Weber, Hal Schneider, and Rosemary Bloom. Is anyone remembering anyone else in addition to those I've already named? Mourner's Kaddish is on page 58. If you're reciting, especially those folks on the stream, please join me at this time. Yitgadal v'yitkadash shmei Rava. Ba'alama divra kirutei v'yamlich malchutei b'chayeichon u'v'yomeichon u'v'chayei d'chol beit Yisrael ba'agala u'v'zman kariv v'imru amen. Yahei shmei Rava mevarach la'alam u'lalamei alamaya. Yitbarach v'yishtabach v'yitpa'ar v'yitromam v'yitnasei v'yithadar v'yit'aleh v'yithalal shmeich d'kudsha b'richu la'ela min kol birchata v'shirata tushbechata v'nechamata da'amiran ba'alama v'imru amen. Yahei shalama rabba min shemaya v'chayim aleinu ve'al kol Yisrael v'imru amen. Osei shalom v'imromav hu ya'asei shalom aleinu ve'al kol Yisrael v'imru amen. Let's see. We'll turn to. We should do some announcements. We should do some other things. We'll move everything to the end of our ritual activity, I guess. Here after Psalm 27, and then we'll sing Yigdal before we turn it over to Rabbi Dr. Gary Zola for his presentation. So we'll recite Psalm 27 individually, except for Achat Sha'alti. LeDavid Adonai Ori v'Yeshi Mimi Ira Adonai Mez Chayai Mimi Echad. Achat shalti me'et Adonai ota avakesh. Achat shalti me'et Adonai ota avakesh. Shivti beveit Adonai kol yemei chayai. Lachazot benoam Adonai ulvaker beichalo. Lachazot benoam Adonai ulvaker beichalo. Ki it's my name, is it going? Mas. Lulehem ati l'rabatu v'Adonai beretz chayim, kaveh el Adonai chazak v'yametz libecha, v'kaveh el Adonai. See some announcements. I will turn to our president, our fearless leader. Do you have any announcements to share?
Yeah, I'll keep it short. We have lots of services in the next couple days. I hope to see everybody tomorrow, Sunday morning for our regular minyan, all throughout Sukkot. And remember, next week we will be screening the Defiant Requiem. And if you haven't bought your tickets, you can still do so.
Sorry? Sunday night, service is Sunday night at 6 p.m. And there's one more thing.
Oh, yes.
Book group Sunday morning at 10:15. It's Dara Horn, right? Yes. Yes. Yeah, a very provocative title. People Love Dead Jews. That's the title. It's, yes, indeed. So, I was looking for... I was looking for my sheet that has the anniversary blessing on it, because it was up here. There it is. Because the way everything broke out this week, so today's the 7th, which means it's the first Friday, but last Saturday was the first Saturday because it was the 1st of October. So we're doing anniversaries this week, and we are observing at least 5 anniversaries in the month of October. So celebrating anniversaries this month are Neil and Lori Dubin, Jim and Emily Silver, Oded Zmora and Tammy Meyer, Daniel Marks and Barry Schockler Marks, and also, among us tonight, Alex and Candy Gellin. Do you care to share with us how many years you're celebrating? 56 years. 56 years. I mean, that's got, no? Yeah, that's, so Nun Vav, that's, there's, very good, very good. Well, we wish you many more happy years. I have without too much ceremony, I'll recite this one. Eloheinu v'Elohei kol doroteinu, our God and God of all generations, we give thanks for the many blessings with which you have blessed the marriages of those together with us here in this holy community. As they continue to share with one another their burdens and their joys, may they always have cause to say, Ashreinu matov chalkenu, how blessed are we, how goodly is our portion. May they be blessed with wisdom and understanding in their relationship and in all their undertakings, as it is written, B'chalchma yibaneh bayit, uvitvuna yitkonan, a house is built by wisdom and established by understanding. May they maintain a home that glows with the light of faith and honors the house of Israel. As they celebrate their time together, may they do so with gladness and thanksgiving, giving glory to your holy name, and let us say, Amen. Mazal Tov on your 56 years, and here's to many, many more. We will, let's see. Oh, I do have another separate announcement. B'Lolavim and Etrogim, if you ordered, those can be picked up at services on Monday as well. I think there were some people said, yeah, they got a note from the office about picking them up early. You do not have to. The Etrogim are here. The Lulavim are also here. The Lulavim showed up a little bit in advance of the Etrogim, and they are currently chilling, quite literally, in the refrigerator. And the Etrogim are in the boardroom. So we will unite them with their proper owners. And I every year I find out something new, and this year it was about Etrogim and intersections with the Shemitah year and how that all works for us if you get your Etrogim from Israel. I felt like I knew that people like to get their Etrogim from Italy and from Morocco, and one big reason is you avoid that entire question about was it produced during the Shemitah year or not. Well, we will turn to Yigdal, page 62, and we'll conclude with that before I turn it over to Dr. Zola. Yigdal Elohim Chai ve'yishtabach Nimtza ve'ein ed el mitziuto Echad ve'en yachid ki yechudo Nelam ve'gam ein sof le'achduto Ein lo dmut haguf ve'eino guf Lo na'aroch elav kedushato Kadmon l'chol davar asher nivra Rishon ve'ein reshit le'reshito Hino adon olam ve'chol notzar Yoreh gedulato malchuto shefa nevuato netano el anshe segulato vetifarto lo kam b'Yisrael kemo she'od navi umabid et tmunato toratem et natan le'amo el al yad nevio ne'eman beito lo yachal Yifa'el velo yamir dato le'olamim lezulato tzofeh ויודע סתרנו מבית לסוף דבר בקדמתו גומל איש חסד כמפעלו נותן לרשע רע כרישתו ישלח קץ ימין משיחנו לפדות מחכה קץ ישועתו מתים יחייל ברוב חסדו ברוך הדי עד שם תהילתו מתים יחייל ברוב חסדו ברוך הדי עד שם תהילתו. I am now pleased to invite Dr. Zola, Rabbi Dr. Gary Zola of the Hebrew Union College Jewish Institute of Religion, Cincinnati, and the American Jewish Archives, the Jacob Rader Marcus Center of the American Jewish Archives. I cannot remember my first encounter with Dr. Zola, but I know that I've had many over the years, and they've all been great. And having him as an instructor for my American Jewish History course was phenomenal because it not only gave me, access to a great mind, but also someone who is intimately familiar with the resources that we have here in Cincinnati in terms of the AJA. And of course, who's built on the great legacy and groundwork that Dr. Marcus laid. And I'm very pleased to have him here and look forward to your presentation.
Am I tied to this because of people who are...
Tied to, you don't have to be. We do have a handheld. It should work. It works.
Does it?
It works.
Okay.
Yeah, you may want to speak close to it.
All right. I'm sure I could project loud enough without this, but there's some people who are at home, so we want them to hear as well. First of all, Shabbat Shalom to everyone, Shana Tova to everyone. Should be a good year. I'm sitting here and I'm getting into that nostalgic stage of life. I see some of you may be joining me, and I'm not a Cincinnatian. It's my adopted home, but I now have been in Cincinnati longer than anywhere else. And I look around, I see so many friends from over the years it really, you know, it gives me perspective on my time here in Cincinnati. So to all of you, and especially want to thank Rabbi Farrow for such a kind introduction. He, as you can see and you know firsthand, was an outstanding student and a wonderful colleague. And we want to also acknowledge Rabbi Barnard, who we've been friends for my entirety of my stay here since the time I was a student until the present time. And to all of you who will go unmentioned, just think of it, you know, Maimonides says the second highest rung of tzedakah is when you do something for someone and that someone doesn't know you've done it, and you don't know to whom it's been done. So consider yourselves on the very high rung of righteousness that I left you off. So I don't have a great deal of time. It's late, but I want to begin before I hand out the text with a little introduction. I think it was Rabbi Shapira, who gave me this assignment, and that is to talk about the Sukkah, which we're about to start from my Reform Jewish roots, the Festival of Booths. We're about to start that holiday, and I think she's the one who said, you know, could you do something on that as a metaphor for the American Jewish experience? And believe it or not, I knew exactly what I wanted to do immediately because of what I'm going to show you tonight. So let me tell you how I got into this. I'm about to introduce you to material that I suspect maybe only, if that, only a dozen people in the whole world know anything about. And I do hope, before I leave this world, to publish some of this. I've been working on it my whole career, and it's very unique, what it really is all about. It's about American Hebrew. And the reason I became interested in American Hebrew is when I was in my last years at HUC, I, like everyone else, had to write a thesis, and I didn't know at that time I was going to remain in Cincinnati, and I thought I might end up in a congregation. And so, although I loved American Jewish history and I adored Dr. Marcus, I thought maybe it would be wiser to do something in Hebrew. And so I went to Dr. Marcus and said, you know, Dr. Marcus, I really want to work with you, but I'm thinking maybe if I go out in the congregational land, if I worked in Midrash or something of that sort, it might be more practical. And he said, listen, do whatever you want. He said, but if you think there's nothing Hebraic in the American Jewish experience, you don't know what you're talking about. So he introduced me to this, and I did my thesis on an aspect of American Hebrew. And then I met this person I'm going to introduce you to this evening. His name is Gershon Rosenzweig. And Rosenzweig is no relation to Franz Rosenzweig, just happens to have the same last name. And this man, I'm about to show you some of his work. He was born in Bialystok. For those of you who don't know exactly where that is, it's a little south of Lithuania. And apparently, he was what you would call a Baki. Does anybody know what a Baki is? A Baki is a real lamdan, a learned person especially in Talmudic literature. And apparently he was really outstanding as a young person, had a photographic mind, and he gets into parody. And the reason he gets into parody is because evidently, I've learned this along the way. So, by the way, a whole book by Israel Davidson on parody in Judaism. And apparently, on Purim in the yeshiva, the Rosh Yeshiva gives up the seat of learning and gives it over to a very competent student who then is supposed to teach a lesson, but somewhat humorous on the basis of the text. Well, he apparently becomes, an expert in this, and he ends up becoming a parodist and a satirist in Hebrew. Like so many of our forebears, he comes to the United States as an immigrant along with the Eastern European migrants, and he settles in New York, and like so many of our forebears, my own grandfather too, he was extremely poor and was a peddler for a period of time, and then decided that his bet was to put his literary skills to work as best he could, and so he works mostly as an editor in a variety of Yiddish papers. He obviously speaks Yiddish, but his true love is Hebrew. Now I want to point out that this is in the late 1880s and early 1890s, so this is even before the first Zionist Congress. So don't confuse this Hebrew with Eliezer Ben Yehuda and the Hebrew in Palestine. These people who loved Hebrew had a different approach to it. They were what you would call maskilim. Anybody know what a maskil is? Anyone want to give a quick, dirty definition of a maskil? Professor, did you want to, or anybody? Yes, but a particular kind of scholar. It's a what?
The Hebrews that are Yiddish, one was not. They were studying a lot of stuff.
That's correct. To do it as quickly and probably imprecisely as possible, if you were raised in a traditional Jewish home, which means, you went to Cheder, and if you got to 8th grade in Cheder, and if you were really smart and good in studies, then the community would push you on to do more. If you weren't, you went to work. But let's assume that, you were very capable. You started to continue to learn, and then something terrible would happen from the perspective of traditional Judaism. And that something terrible is, somehow or another, you were introduced to some study outside of the world of Judaism. And you could find that path in many ways. Usually it was through literature. Like you were exposed to Russian literature. You learned Russian and so forth. But it could have been through philosophy. It could be through even mathematics. You found some way into modern learning. And you wanted to combine your great knowledge of Judaism with modern learning. And this motivated people who spoke Yiddish and people who spoke Hebrew. Hebrew became, for some of these maskilim, including our friend Rosenzweig, the distinguished language of the Jewish people. The Greeks had Greek, the Romans had Latin, the Jews have Hebrew. And they built their Hebrew writings, their modern Hebrew writings, by really wrenching material from out of the Bible or out of rabbinic literature, because though they could speak Hebrew, there was no modern Hebrew, so it was really classical Hebrew and so forth. What makes Rosenzweig very unique is that he develops a whole literature, believe it or not, on the American Jewish immigrant experience in New York in this period of time, the 1880s and 90s. And often he's poking fun at this. And like any satire, some of it can be really yucky, yuck it up kind of stuff, but a lot of it is very sharp and very, very painful, because it reflects the difficulties. Another sidebar is that we today, I'm not accusing anyone in this room, but many people tend to look at the Lower East Side as some kind of wonderful experience, that gee, if we could only get back to the Lower East Side, where, you could walk down the street and get a blintz, and, and everybody spoke Yiddish, and everybody had a great Jewish identity and so forth. And, that's totally nostalgic and is not rooted in any reality at all. It was god-awful, And that's why in one generation, our forebears tried the hell to get out of that setting and move up in Manhattan as quickly as possible. So, the world of our mothers and fathers was not that sweet down there. And he really documents this in his literature. So with that introduction, let me now, I hope everyone is impressed by the fact of what a wonderful pedagogue I am. I didn't pass out my handouts until after I did my introduction, and that way you were looking through them until I read them to see. Okay, here. No, it's okay.
Can I help pass them out?
Yeah, sure, if you like. Here, thanks. There's enough for everyone to have one. Thanks. There's enough for everyone to have one. You don't have to share. Everybody have one? No, okay. No.
Here's one more.
One more? There you go. You have one? I don't know. Okay. So there is a picture of Rosenzweig right on the cover. You can see what he looks like. Actually, he had quite a number of children, I think something like 6. And I actually met his great-grandchildren. They came to hear me talk in New York once. They're very proud of him. So the first, I have 3 things of his that I want to show you. The last is actually about Sukkot. And that's the point of our shiur tonight. But before, I want to give you a little taste of him so you get a feel for who he was and what he did, and then we'll get to Sukkot. And that way you can tell Rabbi Shepard that I did what you wanted me to do. Now, if you turn to the first poem, which is on page... by the way, you see his book there. Some of the poems come from this book, including this first one. I just typed it out and made it nice and big. Who would like to pronounce, and read it carefully, who would like to pronounce the title of this poem? Well, you got to read it very carefully, where the yud is. America, right? America. And that's, of course, you'll see how clever he is. And it begins with, that's how an Eastern European probably would say America, right? America, right? So if we had more time, I'd let you stumble through this, but I'm going to read it. And I want to tell you, I was raised from the beginning of my education to the present day with Sephardic Hebrew. So I have no ability to read in Ashkenazic pronunciation, and I'm not going to try to fake it. So I just want to say for the record that it was written to be read with an Ashkenazic pronunciation.
Yeah.
Correct. But you'll forgive me, I'm just going to read the Hebrew. But you will be surprised at how much of the Hebrew you may know. Let's just do the first, by the way, after, I'm looking at this crowd, I can't imagine that there's anyone here who doesn't know any Hebrew, but if there is such a person, I have my translation following this. So let's read it line by line and try to translate it, okay? So the first line is, Eretz Tova America Bakol Mivorechet. So who would translate that line? It's not hard. Eretz Tova is a good land. America is a good land. Bakol Mivorechet. It's blessed in every way, right? Bakol Mivorechet. Okay, next line. Admata Ka'ed. Its land is like Eden. America's like the Garden of Eden. Lechem le'oved notenet. Bread to the oved. What's an oved? The worker, right. The bread to the oved notenet. That means America's land is like the Garden of Eden. It feeds enough people, right? Or if you want to be more literal, it provides workers with food. Or kaf regel enosh ba oz dorechet. It's a little harder, but kaf regel is a fancy word for your foot or even stride, the human's foot or stride. Ba, which means in America. So the way we'd say it in English, translated, would be in America, the human's foot or the human stride is one of oz. We proceed with dignity, with strength. In other words, the human being is a mensch in America, right? You're a somebody. And then why? Because it says ki leor, because of the light. Udror, what is dror? The freedom. Brita ne'emenet. What is brita ne'emenet? What is brit? Covenant, right. I'm so this is an educated crowd. When I sometimes talk, they tell me it's circumcision. But this is the brilliance, and I love this stuff. See, what? Anybody want to take a guess? What's he saying? What's the covenant? What's he talking about? We're talking about America. What? It's the Constitution. Exactly. In other words, all of these things, he says, are because of the Brita, her Constitution, her faithful Constitution. And he did not have the modern, brilliant Hebrew term for Brit, Constitutia. He didn't have that. So he had to use Brit. And he wrenches Brit. That's the best he could do. I could do a whole session on the fabulous words he uses to create concepts that he doesn't have from modern Hebrew. And then he goes on and he says, Gam am nigas. Now that's a hard word. Chances are you wouldn't know it. It comes from the Bible. It's in the book of Samuel. It means to be pressed down, pushed down. So even an oppressed or pushed down people, me'az, meaning a forever pushed down people. He's referring, of course, to the Jews. Gam am nigas me'az matzah va nofesh, which means even an oppressed people like the Jews, who've been forever put down, can find in America nefesh, right? Breathing room, right? They can find their place. And then he says, Aritzim paritzim tachtav bal ya'iku, which aritzim and paritzim is like a parallel term. Even the bad guys, the evil guys, the wrongdoers, they're not going to be able to succeed. And then comes what he does with every bayit, with every paragraph. The last two lines are the hooker. And he uses a fancy Hebrew word for aval, which means but. And the word is achen. You see it? And that is a $25 word for but. And he says aval, or achen, Yisrael yotzer avdut alei chofesh. Anyone want to try to translate that? But Israel creates, right, Yotzer or. Israel creates avdut. What's avdut? Slavery. Avdut alei chofesh. But the people of Israel in America create, they become slaves. they make slavery out of freedom. And then here comes his play on words, because he says, Po, Ami, Rik, Hu. Because in America, Ami, my people, Reik, empty, Hu. My people have become hollow. And if you notice, that's a parallel to the title of the poem, America. America, Ami, Rik, Hu. See? And that's the brilliance. I was once on a plane and I was working, his most famous work, if you look him up in the encyclopedia, they always cite his most famous work is called the Talmud Yankee, or in English, the Yankee Talmud. And what he's done is he's written a whole Talmud, not really a whole Talmud, he's written, you know, a booklet about this thick, and I think there's 4 or 5 tractates, and it looks just like a Talmud. It's got a Mishnah and a Gemara, and it's got commentary all around, and it's all about America. And it's this kind of material. It uses Aramaic. It's very difficult. I was working on a section of it, and I was on a plane on the way back from Israel. I was sitting next to a Hasid, and I could see he's looking at me, you know, and I don't have a kippah, and he's looking, and he's looking, and he's reading this, and he finally says to me in Hebrew, what are you reading? And so I gave him a quick summary of what I just told you. He says, can I see it? And so I gave it to him. He's reading it, reads it. He could read it probably, I was, you know, breaking my teeth on it, and he was probably able to get through it a lot quicker. And he said, to me in Hebrew, he said, this man is a genius. Because he could see, he understood the jokes and everything, but he could see that this fellow knew everything, and that in order to really understand the jokes, you had to really also know everything. And very few people do. So we just left, if you want to read every paragraph, and you know, you can go to my translation, which follows it on page 5 and 6. Then there's another picture of him on page 7. And since we just finished Yom Kippur, I thought you might enjoy reading this Al-Chet. He did a parody on Al-Chet. He, by the way, has written poems like this on all the holidays. And this, I love this particular Al-Chet. It's, again, a lot of the pathos of Jewish life. So, just very quickly, he calls it Vidui Hagadol, and it says, underneath, he says, Shel Yisrael Saba, Behit Vaduto Al Chata'av Lifnei Ha'amin. And if you look at my translation on the next page, it's the great confession of old man Israel, old Israel, for the sins that Israel has committed from the world's point of view. And think about what this means. In other words, here on Yom Kippur, look at all the failings that we have done as a human being and as a community. And that's how we focus. And he's turned this on its head. And, I'm just going to read 1 or 2 lines in the Hebrew so you can see how cleverly he aligns it with the Hebrew, the real Hebrew, but changes it enough and changes the meaning. Then we'll just do the English because I don't want to keep you here too late. But he says here, Al chet shechatanu begichenu meirachem, ve'al chet shechatanu bedarshenu lachem, ve'al chet shechatanu behigayon v'asechel, ve'al chet shechatanu biv'idat ochel. And now you see how he's made it rhyme like that. And look what he's saying, and you'll see just from what I've read in the Hebrew, he says, for the sin which we have sinned by just being born. Meaning, what he means by this is just being Jewish. Just by virtue of our birth as Jews. And look at the Hebrew again. Begichenu merachem. In other words, it's literally a rachem. A rechem is of the womb. So a literal translation would be from breaching the womb. Right? And then he says, for the sin which we have sinned by pursuing a livelihood. Just here in New York, just trying to get by. And they look at us like, askance. For the sin which we have sinned by being clever and ingenious. Because, whenever we find in the face of overwhelming obstacles way to get by, they pick on us. For the sin which we have sinned by our commensal gatherings. That's a Zola word. That means, because we get together and we enjoy holiday meals together, and we have our way of eating. For the sin which we sin by being diligent in our work. And for the sin which we have sinned by showing affection to our family. For the sin which we have sinned by sanctifying our religion. Because we care about being Jewish. And for the sin which we have sinned by living ethically. For the sin which we've sinned by being long-suffering. And for the sin which we have sinned by having a merciful heart. For the sin which we have sinned by watching what we eat. Meaning, of course, the dietary laws. And for the sin which we have sinned by refraining from drink. Right? I don't know if we could lay claim to that anymore, but there was a time when it felt like the non-Jew was the person who drank. It's not necessarily the case anymore. For the sin which we have sinned by the way we conduct business.
That's Korah, is that just a play on the way we would spell it?
What?
Korah.
The Hebrew?
Yeah. Is that his own word? Like, but we spell instead of, we can spell it.
Yes. Chorah is...
So now we spell them. We spell something with some chet, right?
Yeah. Yeah. No, you're thinking of schar.
Yeah.
You're thinking of with a cha. Yeah, that's a different word, but this is correct. This is and kinyan. And then for the sin which we have sinned by work and by hobby, for the sin which we have sinned by being generous, for the sin which we have sinned by not treating animals cruelly, for the sin, I don't know what he means by that, b'tsa'ar ba'alei chayim. I'm taking a guess here, One of the fun things about documents, right, is everybody's entitled to interpret it the way he or she wants to. Knowing these people, they're not talking about their pets, right? They're not talking about cats and dogs, right? I assume he's talking maybe about, slaughtering, right? The way it's shreita, right? That's my assumption, but I can't say for sure. For the sin which we have sinned by being abstemious on the day of tribulation, Day of Atonement, for the sin which we have sinned by avoiding excess, for the sin which we have sinned by enduring every kind of sorrow, and for the sin which we have sinned by becoming the tarnigol, by being the scapegoat for the world. Now, this is not what you call ha-ha satire, right? This is that more sharp, bitter satire. So finally we get to the point, and I can say that I've done what Rabbi Shapiro wants, And his poem on Sukkah is one of my favorite. The two that I love the best, and maybe I'll come back and do the other one I love is he has one on Hanukkah, which is really great. But I love the Sukkah one, and the poem on Sukkah is called Sukkat David. If you will, the house of David, or the booth of David. And the Hebrew is so beautiful because he borrows extensively from Song of Songs. Lots and lots of phrases here are from the Song of Songs. But because of time, turn to page, the translation, and see what you think of this. So he begins, and this is right from the Song of Songs. He begins with this paragraph. He says, "I'm upon my couch, or my sofa, I lie dreaming." If you go back, for example, to the Hebrew, Al eres yitzu'ai, ani shochev chozeh. It's beautiful Hebrew. It's gorgeous Hebrew. But he says, I'm dreaming, but my heart is still awake, and I'm seeing visions. My inner being is caught up in a complicated or multifaceted dream, and as my dream unfolded on the couch, I see a sukkah. It's an ancient sukkah that was built years ago, collapsing from below like a shaky fence. Its walls were frail and its roof was modest. Instead of sound material, there was clay, material, and plaster. The wind blew from the four directions, and with might it rained down blows to topple it. The sukkah swayed and almost fell, but miraculously it stood and was spared from collapse. Now here comes the part where you now have to let your imagination go and ask yourself, who is he talking about? Suddenly, I saw a throng of people standing about. They gathered together and appointed two leaders. I heard a voice, "Come, let us figure out a way so that our sukkah, our ancestral heritage, will not tumble." Some declared, "Let no hand touch it. Preserve the plaster. Do not smooth it flat. For all that is upon it is our ancestral inheritance. Strengthen its walls with textured and veneered material." But others cried out, "Holy cow, it'll collapse under its own weight. This plaster is of no use to us. Neither did our ancestors know about this, the plaster. Therefore, this and nothing else we recommend, lighten the burden of the heavy plaster that weighs down upon it." Okay, who can tell me what's going on here?
Sounds like an extended metaphor about Judaism.
Yes, yes. So the Sukkah becomes for him the Sukkat David, the Jewish people, the Jewish religion, if you will, the heritage of Israel. Right?
Orthodox Judaism.
Well, The sukkah is Judaism. And then he sees two groups, right? Two groups define themselves. Well, or Americans, or maybe even reformers. Could be, right? So one group, what do they say about the plaster? Yeah, build it up more and more, because the more plaster you put on it, the more you put on the sukkah, the more sturdy it becomes. Whereas the other group says in complete opposite, they say, holy cow, if you do that, it's going to collapse under its own weight. So take that stuff off so it won't collapse. And then the second to last paragraph, and as they spoke, that is, now he's focusing on those who wish to remove things, they quickly struck out with axes and with sledgehammers and pickaxes, and they pounded away. And the walls were toppling, and the rafters were breaking apart, and it seemed as if the sukkah was about to break apart. And from the sound of the blows that I heard in my days, I was stirred from my slumber. It was only a dream. Now, put your interpretive hats on, and what do you think he's saying about the American Jewish experience?
In general, something that will soon pass.
Okay, could be. Who?
He's thinking the traditionalists will collapse it away and then it will over some point.
Well, I don't know. I mean, who are the ones who are taking out the pickaxe and the sledgehammer? The modernists, right? And they're whacking it to, in other words,
Yeah, but he interrupts it, and the sukkah remains standing.
that's right. Yeah. Don?
It's sort of a contradiction, I think, because in Roman numeral 6, the people who are the anti-traditionalists, who want to tear down the whole question, they said our ancestors didn't know about it.
That's right.
So they're making it something we got to harken back to the days of when things were simpler than our ancestors, which is sort of counterintuitive. Usually reformers want to do away with it.
Well, but here I would offer a different way of looking at it, because very often the reformers would argue that, you know, the rabbinic overlay changed or enhanced or added to the more simpler view of the Bible, and therefore we could do away with the Talmudic overlay because the Bible was what we were really after anyway, and of course, and reduced down to its essence would be the ethical commandments, and that's it. Now, I can't say, for example, that Claire is wrong. I mean, maybe he is talking about America. I mean, that would be a theme of his. But he could also be talking, having studied a lot of his stuff, he goes after the reformers sometimes. By the way, he also goes after crazy orthodoxy too, you know, the people. So he doesn't spare, you know, like a good barb, he doesn't spare anybody. But what I guess I'm asking you is, do you think he's taking sides here as to the future of the sukkah? Which is, or do you think he's? I guess it's time to leave, right? Normally I get the hook, but this is these are the lights. You know, do you think he's taking sides, or do you think he's just yes?
I think he's just saying that there might be a problem here, and we need to wake up and realize that if the two factions come together, there may be nothing left.
That's a wonderful interpretation. Yeah, to me, it's very evocative, to me, and it's very touching, and, you know, it introduces the struggle keeping Judaism going in America, and that's something that we still struggle with. The same exact, in a sense, motivation is, you know, on the one hand, still in America, we have people who are saying, you know, the answer is not all of these programs. The answer is not all of the money we're investing in getting people from the outside in. The answer is do the mitzvot, and the people who do those, they'll continue Judaism. That's the true Judaism, and so forth. And then you have a whole world in America that to this very day, you know, there's so many people not inside the synagogue. How can we get them to come inside? We have to make it palatable to them. So you see that even back then in the 1880s and 1890s, he's noticing the same thing. And it's, yes, Don, please.
I remember this is sort of similar to what I read during the Nazi period in Germany. All these assimilated Jews couldn't understand what was happening because they thought they were assimilated Germans and they were being persecuted anyway. And the more traditional Orthodox said, see that you have this coming because you abandoned the core of Judaism to try to do like everyone else. And this is your compensation. You deserve this. You abandon all the out.
Right. Well, yeah. Well, I mean, to me, you're conflating a couple of things. You know, I mean, first of all, it's true there were lots of Germans who felt very much as though they were German, and you know, all these people who had fought in World War I, right, and they had their awards and so forth, and they thought that would all help them and everything. Didn't necessarily mean they were not participants in Judaism. Then they may have been, there was a large Reform community in Germany. And the other piece that you're saying, which is also true, is that there were people afterwards who would say that the reason the Holocaust occurred is because God was punishing the Jewish people because of these people who didn't obey the law, which that's not the kind of higher power that is attractive to me. But yes, Rabbi, please.
One thing I noticed is that he is very critical in stanza 7, in which the discussion of taking out
Yes,
taxes
yes,
and
yes.
sledgehammers. But he's also very critical of the tradition in stanza 2.
That's right.
By saying it was falling apart.
That's
It was collapsing from below like a shaky fence. Its walls were frail, its roof was modest. Instead of sound material, there was clay material and plastic.
That's right. I agree with you.
He doesn't. I don't think he picks sides, and I think he's critical of both sides clearly.
Well, that's good. The one thing I tend to agree with you on this because you know, again, just because I've had the opportunity to read more of what he's written, I know his point of view on things. But I do tend to agree with you. And he could also, if you really read it nuanced, you could see in that 7th verse that he may not be opposed to alteration, but it's the way in which it's being done, right? In other words, it's careless. They're just whacking away, right? They're using sledgehammers when you might need just something more delicate, right? And that comes across in the Hebrew. Yes.
When you think of Jews as a persecuted people, I think what he's saying is if Judaism is destroyed, it might be destroyed from within.
Right. Right. So you see, I mean, the sukkah is, has been used by the sages of yore as a metaphor for all of life, right? That, you know, every part of life is shaky, and we live as if we can make security out of the world, and we don't like to face the facts that we can't control the world, and so this sukkah reminds us of the fragility of life and how easy it is for it to fall apart. And we think about that. The sages themselves, talk about that. And here we have a new thing for you to think about, the American Jewish experience. The sukkah, according to Rosenzweig, a metaphor for the American Jewish experience as well. Yes, please.
I saw it more as a generational conflict. The old ways versus we want a new way. And both groups want to perpetuate the inheritance, but in their own way.
Well, that's a wonderful interpretation too. And I mean, ultimately, this is what this kind of literature is supposed to do. And so I think the rabbi said about 45 minutes. So in keeping, Dr. Marcus was my beau ideal. He was my ideal, and he always used to say that the mind can absorb only as much as the tushy can endure. So I'll leave you with that and wish you a Shabbat Shalom. And these are for you if you'd like. If you want to read the rest of the poems, they're yours.
If we redistribute them, we can double or even triple the number of people who see.
The Barnards are hosting a Sukkah Kiddush at their house.
Don't remember the axes.
Right. Especially not on Shabbos, but we also care about the integrity of your sukkah.
So not a couple, just that being sponsored by the Barnards, and no reservations are required. Just want to spread the word.
Nice to get a general idea of
I also just want to say a big thank you to Dr. Zola for being here tonight. And it was a pleasure to read this. I really enjoyed it. I was actually reminded when I worked at the AJ. I worked at the AJ a couple times over the course of my tenure at HEC, and there was a point at which I had to go through the letters of an American Hebraist. I cannot remember his name off the top of my head, Avraham something, but it was in the late 1800s, early 1900s, and
Was it Harkavy?
it might have been. It might have been Harkavy. Good stuff.
The interesting thing about Rosenzweig, there's a lot of poking fun at Isaac Mayer Wise. By Rosenzweig. I mean, they were contemporaries, right? Wise was an older man, but he does a takeoff on the Haggadah for Passover, and he pokes fun at Wise. He always refers to at Wise as Lavan, which is white, like ice, but it's also deliberately Laban, who's the wicked. And he's always criticizing Wise. But if you come to the American Jewish Archives, I'll show you Rosenzweig writes to Wise and asks him to subscribe to his newspaper because Wise could read it, and so could Professor Deutsch. These were the two guys that could. So it's like politics, right? In other words, there's the show for the public, and then there's something that takes place privately. I always got a kick out of that he would write him and say, I hope you'll subscribe.
Thank you
You're very welcome.
Invite everybody to head out and see the live. Matt?